Three goals: acknowledgement, redress, closure.
And every idea, you have to present it to someone who is elected in order to get that idea to Ledge Council, which then produces a bill.
Not just a national service. This is a sacred duty. This is a service to your people.
Whereas the black line is largely a bulk of people that were enslaved and locked to the bottom of America.
80 in Sacramento, 80 West California. Strongly support AB 3121. Please vote aye.
Please vote yes.
Which the whole culture has been edulcified.
All right. Thank you for joining us today. We had a little hiccup getting on, but we are here and we are live. We're here today with Ron Chavez of California Community Builders and Angel Cardenas, one of the filmmakers on the Redlined short film today. They're going to answer some questions about what redlining is and how it was allowed to happen in the first place. So with that, we'll go into our featured short screening. And when we come back, we'd like you to think about some questions that you have for Ron and Angel so we can have this important discussion. Here we go. Okay, we're back. So that was pretty heavy. So Ron, what motivated you to produce this short film?
Well, I work for a nonprofit, and our whole mission is to close the racial wealth gap. So this is a tool, really a vision of my boss, Jan Gamboa, as a way to educate folks on the history of redlining and the impact. A lot of folks say, "Oh, that was in the past. There's no reason why you can't make it now." But we're trying to show that it drags us all down continually, and now the pandemic has validated that.
Definitely. And there was a quote in the film that it would take 200 years, 7 generations to close the gap. We don't have 200 years. So what are the people who are living now going, what kind of option do they have to live in a time where the gap is closed and they can live like Americans?
Well, I mean, our whole hope is to organize folks, educate them, organize, and fight back. That's really the purpose. A lot of folks have heard of affordable housing, that term, affordable housing. But in reality, affordable housing really means rental property, or multifamily rental projects. And the state does not invest enough in home ownership. And our goal is to make that a priority, just as much. We need rental property for everyone to live, but we also want to promote home ownership because that's the only way we're going to create intergenerational wealth to close that gap.
All right. And again, back to the inspiration behind making the film. I know you do it as part of your job, but what made you say, I want to make a movie about this in particularly?
Well, we understand that social media is powerful nowadays, and it's just a way to, a lot of the folks behind our leadership are older civil rights workers. So we're trying to get into the 21st century.
All right. And Angel, that's a question for you as a filmmaker. Did you know about redlining before you took this project on?
Kim, I really didn't know about it. I had heard the term, but I really wasn't sure what it was. And as a content creator, filmmaker, whatever they call it these days, for someone to give you an idea and a script, and not just an idea and a script, but one that's truly impactful and one that can educate people and help hopefully change policy and change the future, was just amazing to be a part of it. But I had not heard about it, but watching or sitting there, conducting these interviews. Well, Ron conducted the interviews, but when I'm sitting there, looking through the viewfinder, listening to these experts on the topic and listening to, Betty Reed Soskin, talk about her story. It's just, it makes the hairs on your back stand up. And then you start thinking like, oh, I lived through this. Like I grew up, experiencing this. This is crazy. And people are still experiencing it. And so just to be a part of it was pretty powerful. So, but you know what, hats off to Ron and John Gamboa and the California Community Builders for putting this together. Because everyone that watches this, I get the same reaction. Everyone's like, I didn't even know. Wow, that's crazy.
Right.
So, it just makes people think about things. And a lot of people come away after watching it. I'm sure you did for the first time. I think you even told me after you watched for the first time, you're pissed off. And so for a piece of content like that to spark emotion and educate you, makes it a very powerful piece.
Right. That definitely. That's why it should be shared far and wide. And we really thank you for joining us today. Umoya, hopefully pop that in the YouTube chat, the link to the Redline video, so our viewers can take that link and share it with their networks and really get the word out about this. Now, Ron, the Declaration of Independence said all men are created equal. So how did a law like this even get on the books in the first place?
That's a good question, and I think it's basic racism. I think, when you go back 100 years, that's about 100 years ago, people had a view that people of color were less than, and they weren't real citizens in many ways. So they didn't even flinch to enact this law. This happened coming out of the Great Depression, and it was a way to stimulate the economy. Everyone was poor during the Great Depression. And, but from 1934 to 1962, 98% of this money went to white folks. So they were subsidized. They were given a head start. And that's a part of our analysis, is that's why there's a racial wealth gap today. So, every time I see this video, I get mad. Even now, I've seen it 50 times. I get angry. And, we tried to measure the amount of the subsidy in today's dollars, and it's minimum of $5 trillion. But what it does not calculate is all the pain and suffering that emerged from that. Redlining institutionalized ghettos. It institutionalized segregation. They put people of color in neighborhoods that weren't as safe, healthy, underserved. They put freeways through it. They put them in old industrial neighborhoods. That's why we're seeing the health effects now in the pandemic. It's real. It lives today.
So this was done entirely by design. And you say minimum of 5 trillion would be the economic impact for redlining. Because when I think of it in terms of, let's say, my mom in the 70s, mom and dad, they purchased their home for $30K. Now that home is, 470 it appraises at. So all the times that people were left out of buying that property, that, I mean, how did these housing, how did the prices of housing get so out of control?
Well, now that once folks had homes and there was efforts to try to build more affordable housing, and all, NIMBYs, not in my backyard activists, try to keep those projects out of their neighborhood. It's okay for you to build projects on the other side of a town, but don't build them in my neighborhood. So they actively stopped housing, so that we're 3.5 million units short of the housing we need for the workforce in California today.
Okay, and Ron, you say that these ghettos or the hoods were less desirable neighborhoods, but today we see gentrification is, really out of control. So can you talk a little bit about that? How now that, white people are moving into these neighborhoods, are they appreciating in value? Is that another form of discrimination?
Well, if you took the redlined maps back in the day and you overlap them with the gentrification maps, they're the same. And the reason that is, if you can't buy into the neighborhood, you're vulnerable. You're a renter. So you're vulnerable to folks pushing you out. So redlining still, rears its ugly head. It's a direct reflection of redlining.
You know what, Kim, and there's so much debate on gentrification and how it's good for neighborhoods, low-income neighborhoods. But then on the flip side, you also hear how my good buddy grew up in the Mission District, and that's an area that's been gentrified. Ron, you might know a little bit about this, but there are stories that landlords will come in and they'll pay a tenant to completely move out, just get out. Here's $3,000. Get out.
If you're lucky.
If they're lucky, the family gets that money. They get pushed out because the closest place they can afford now might be Martinez in Contra Costa County. And now, how do they get to work? How are they going to get back to work, to the city, to their job? And then that goes into a whole nother thing of how horrible that is for the environment. Now there's more cars on the road. So it's kind of a mess. I mean, but there's two sides to the story. So that's just one of the arguments that I hear that makes sense.
And where are the brown communities going is one question I asked a friend from New York, because Brooklyn's been gentrified, all the bureaus have been gentrified. I'm like, well, where do the brown communities go? And she's like, I really don't know. Maybe Long Island. So maybe you can answer that question, Ron. Where do people go? I mean,
they drive
homelessness that we've been seeing.
They drive to where they can afford. So a lot of folks have moved to the Central Valley. I think the estimate is 170,000 folks drive in from the Valley to the Bay Area every day. That's because cities have not provided the homes that their workforce requires. In fact, it's a state law that you're supposed to build the number of homes for your workforce, but they don't do it because of NIMBYs. And so there's and at the same time, we have a climate war now, right? And so many of these liberal environmentalists are pushing to create a fine, essentially, for driving in from the Valley to go work. Because we actually sued the California Air Resources Board because we think that's unfair. That you're going to penalize folks that have to drive 2 hours a day or 3 hours a day to come to work because you have not fulfilled your housing element, your housing goals. So it's like a double whammy. So that's what we've done. We've sued them and said, we don't want people of color to be the collateral damage in this climate war. And so there's a fight going on.
And speaking of litigation, a lot of this just sounds outright criminal. Has anybody tried to sue, bring a suit against these redlining policies, practices? Is there anything that can be done to reverse it?
Well, redlining is illegal, supposedly, but what we're dealing with right now is the effects. So there's different strategies to do that. We try to you've heard of streamlining some of the laws. So cities are being sued, the governor has acted, but they're fighting back. But recently in Southern California, they've put out a housing plan, which was redlining all over again. And luckily we challenged them, and because they were afraid we were going to sue them, we just found out yesterday they backed off. So there is power when you fight back.
So that means that they're scrapping their housing plan?
Right, they had to redo it. They were going to just, again, do the same thing they've done before, is just only can have certain type of housing in certain neighborhoods. And it was a major reversal, so I'm very happy that we've had a little win.
Okay, and can you talk a little bit about your wins with the banks and what you had to do with the bank mergers to?
Well, that wasn't my history, but there's a whole set of advocates that work in the background that challenge inequity. But this is a bigger problem than banks now. It's local governments not doing their part. It's the state government not stepping up. And part of it is a miseducation. Like I said, most folks are all for affordable housing, but don't know that it doesn't include home ownership. And so we're trying to educate them that home ownership is an essential part of a healthy state.
Okay. And Angel, I know you once told me that when you moved into your new home a couple of years ago, that you found some documents that blatantly showed that redlining existed. How do you feel the makeup of this neighborhood you live in now that used to actively practice redlining? Have you seen much change?
Yeah, so I'm in Southland Park, and it's a area of Sacramento. It's an old established area, predominantly white. In fact, in the Redline film, Karen, the African American woman that showed the deed that she's hanging on the wall, just to remind her that, just a short while ago, was it 1950, I think, when she bought the home. So the deed said African Americans or anyone of color could not live in the home unless they were, employed or servants. So when I went to her house I had heard she had this hanging on the wall. I didn't believe it. And then when I went to film that day, my jaw just dropped. I could not believe that this was actually in a deed, and this deed still existed to this day. And then, fast forward, I don't know, 8 or 9 months later, we move into our home, which was built in 1955 in Southland Park. And sure enough, when those documents came over, I looked through the deed, and the same thing was in that deed, and I just couldn't believe it. But I mean, the area is still, mostly retired folks, and you do see some people of color around here. My Black Lives Matter sign in the front yard. I see people walking by and kind of get some awkward stares. So I feel like the area is still somewhat secluded, but hopefully that'll change.
Okay, so you said that the documents that they provided you still had that language present.
Yeah, I should. Let me. I'm gonna go ahead.
Ron, you said that this is illegal. So why is this language still in mortgage documents?
Yeah.
It's because it's just no one changed it, although they're not valid anymore. There is a movement to get that language off the documents, but the damage is done, really.
Right. And do you see at all removing the language as erasure, where because people don't know about it unless they go out and seek the information, or unless they experience themselves and have a reason to look into the information? Do you see it as erasure at all? Kind of erasing the sins of the past?
I think in some ways, we had some white folks in the media. We saw the video, and they did not believe that 98% of all this money went to white folks. They didn't believe it. It's impossible, and this is all facts that they're there because they're subsidized. It's not because they're smarter or harder working or anything like that.
Okay.
You know what, Ron, real quick, when interviewing Richard Green, the professor at UCLA, after our interview, I immediately asked him, I said, what do you tell people who debate this and who say, this information is incorrect, or, what are you talking about? It's a hoax. His answer was, Angel, nobody really debates this with me. He's like, these aren't lies. These are hard facts. People just try to brush it under the rug and forget about it and move on and say times have changed. And that was another like, oh, wow moment, while producing this film, as there's no debating it. You can't deny it. That happened.
It's right there in your face. Now, moving forward, you said that there's legislation that it's going to be on the ballot this year in November, SB 1120. Talk about how that could help to close the gap.
Well, let me step back. Actually, over the last 2 or 3 years, there's been over 400 housing bills to solve the housing crisis, but only about 2 or 3 even mention home ownership. So there's a lot of ignorance on the part of the state legislators too. They think this is history. So actually there's a bill in the Senate right now, SB 1120. It's not in November, it's right now. It's the last one left in this legislative period. Everyone should call their state senator, look them up, and say, hey, I want you to support SB 1120. 1120, one of the ways they kept people of color out of the neighborhoods is they said you only could have a single family house, which was expensive back in the day. You couldn't have a duplex, you couldn't have a triplex, because that's where people of color would come in. SB 1120 allows for a single family property to be subdivided. You can add even a duplex. You could sell it. It's a way of creating wealth. It's a way to create more units. So that's one strategy that's being put forth right now. So people should call their state senator, email them tomorrow or it's Monday.
And if SB 1120 were to pass, would the developers then step in and build more of these units?
Well, that's another. Well, on the other side is we're talking to banks. We're saying you need to help finance these projects. You've heard of granny units. That's been legal last year. You can add an additional unit on your property, but they're not a lot of financing mechanisms. So we're pushing, instead of paying for rental properties, lend folks money so they can add a granny unit or subdivide their property and add a duplex for a family to live or for your own children to live, or sell it and put that money aside for your grandchildren.
Okay. Are there any down payment assistance programs out there that you can recommend to people right now today that are looking to?
Not offhand, but if folks would email me at rchavez@ccbuilders.org, we put out a newsletter every week and give the latest information on home ownership opportunities and action items. So rchavez@ccbuilders.org will add you to our mailing list, or you can go to our project, the200.org, and we also share some of our strategies and what we're doing.
Okay, so it sounds like there's still not a whole lot being done.
Not enough.
to help people out. And you said that litigation really hasn't been successful, like in reversing some of this and saying, hey, we've got to split this pie up a little better than what it's been.
I'm encouraged, with this, the Great Awakening or the Great Reckoning. Now, if there's ever been an opportunity to push, it's now.
All right.
More open to the truth. We've known about this a long time, some of us, longer than others. But now's the time to organize, educate yourselves, and fight.
And you say to do that legally, politically, political activation, talk to the lawmakers and
Exactly.
the people who can make it better. All right.
Yeah. Well, when Ron says fight, he means both ways too. You gotta remember, he grew up in Richmond. He's tough. He wants to physically fight people sometimes.
No, I only defend myself. I'm not a.
He defends himself.
All right. Well, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to defend our communities.
Yep.
So SB 1120, contact your senators. Any other advice that you can give people looking to get into home ownership?
Well, there's some folks out there that are starting to make some money, but they may not have $100,000 for a down payment. In another life, I was a mortgage broker 30 years ago. I didn't get involved in this other mess, but so I have a banker friend who says, a couple folks that are making decent money can pull their money together and buy rental property, buy a multifamily project to get your foot in the door. That's one way to get started. Buy rentals, start building wealth, long-term wealth. That's one strategy that I'd recommend for folks who are, serious.
All right. And Angel, with you getting into your property, and you say it's in a traditional white area, did you find any hurdles? Did you feel like you had more hurdles to clear in getting the loan?
Yeah. So I'll make this quick. We put in offers around the Greenhaven Pocket area, Southland Park area. It's like the southern part of Sacramento. Closer to Elk Grove, and we lost out on five offers. The last one, we had a new real estate agent, and when we put that bid in and lost to another family, we found out that our offer was $45,000 over the highest offer. So you would think, okay, yeah, the family, they're going to go with that, $45,000 over. And we didn't get the home. And our real estate agent said, well, I'm not surprised. He said, this agent is, everyone knows that he is a racist. And so, and we heard that from multiple people. And this was after we had done the Redlining film. So I wasn't surprised. I was pissed off. And it just kind of stung to experience that, when everyone says, well, that, the real estate agents, it's, that was a long time ago. Things have changed in terms of the agents, but, apparently they're still out there.
So they would rather take a $45K loss than let a person of color into the neighborhood?
Yeah.
Is that what I'm hearing?
That's what you're hearing, which is crazy. And the home that we purchased, the home that we finally won the bid. The real estate agent, she was a Latina, and so I was like, I wonder if that helped.
So having people in the real estate part of it helps, having people of color in the real estate. You think that helped the cause of collective effort?
Apparently.
Things to say. One, in terms of a resource, people should look up the California Housing Finance Agency. They have some great programs on down payment assistance. So they have money, and they really try to help folks. So California Housing Finance Agency in Sacramento.
California.
Housing Finance Agency.
Okay. And Ron, on the story that Angel just told, that sounds like it's pretty blatant, but you said that this is an illegal practice. So wouldn't you be able to sue if something like that happens, something so blatant?
I'm not an attorney, but I would certainly call out that rental agency.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we had talked earlier, we mentioned this whole thing about predatory lending.
Yes.
And one of the things is, I would say some of our own people of color real estate agents or loan officers put a lot of our community in bad loans back in the day, into predatory loans that had, weird terms, and set people up for failure when the whole market turned down. So
are we talking about 2008, the 2008?
Yeah. So just because you're a person of color doesn't necessarily mean you can take care of your own community, because greed is a powerful thing. That's just, a lesson learned.
Okay. And do you see that improving through policies that have been put in place? The predatory lending is becoming less the norm, or is it still out there and rampant?
I think so, but part of the problem with predatory loans wasn't just the banks. It's like the federal government did not do their oversight. As a mortgage broker, when I got out of it, I started seeing loans that were like, how can that person afford that home? They don't make that much money. Well, there's some, loan officers were telling them to lie and all this. But in reality, if the government wanted to stop, they could just verify their income and say, you don't qualify for that loan. So the government still has responsibility to do oversight on banks. And then the banks got bailed out. And the people who lost their home, as in the video shows, 20 years of wealth collectively. We're back 20 years ago in terms of wealth. So,
yeah. And as far as the 2008 downturn, people not able to recover, are they making any new, rules or laws or legislation, I don't know, to make it easier for people to stay in their homes? I mean, I know we had the modifications. That was one thing that they did put out. Were there any other, safety nets put in place for people?
Well, what happened was they made the loans harder to get. So people couldn't get, and plus people lost their down payment, right? They lost all their wealth, so they didn't have any down payment anymore. So they didn't do that much. But I'm happy to see that in this pandemic, at least there's been some abeyance of mortgage payments. We'll see how long that lasts.
Okay. And that bill, what is that bill, the one coming to sunset on the 31st? Is it 1436, I believe? Have you been following that one at all? Where, for renters, forgiveness and mortgage forgiveness. You haven't really been following.
Yeah, the current stopgap. Yeah, that's all up in the air. Once you get the devil out of the office, we've still got a lot of work to do.
And are they doing anything for, let's say, struggling homeowners that are in their home and struggling? Is there any relief out there, any relief in sight that you see at all?
I'm hopeful. Like I said, I think with the new administration, I think people are going to have to do some rational, actions.
All right. So you just say pay attention to what's going on, what they're doing in Congress there, and reach out to your lawmakers and fight the good fight. Is all we can really do. Okay. All right.
Hey, Kim, we have 5 minutes left, and we have some questions from the YouTube community. I don't know if you want to read those. I posted them in the chat.
Okay, from YouTube. Let's see. What do you think about Naca home buying program, NACA? Are you familiar with that one, Ron?
I need a little more information. I think I've heard of it. I'm not quite sure.
Okay. Let's see. What else do we have here? What's next for getting this short out there more marketing wise? And what can our ADOS chapters and folks do to assist with this as far as getting the Redline video out far and wide? Because it is nice, concise information about.
Please, like it on YouTube, share it with your friends, ask them to share it if they like it. Yeah, that's educate folks. There's a lot of good redlining videos out there. And you also said that you are working with different school systems, the community colleges, and some of the UC systems to get the information out there. If any of our ADOS community out there are connected to such systems, should they just get in touch with you if you're interested in making an appearance and speaking on the matter? Please, yes. We'll go, now with online presentations, we can go anywhere. Okay. And then we have another question here. What do you think about 40-year loans, also buying property while in a pandemic? Is that a good idea? It might be an opportunity. 40-year loans, reduce the payment. I think it's a good way.
I'm no
option.
I'm no expert as a loan officer, real estate agent, or anything like that. But I mean, Ron, the first thing I think is a 40-year loan is you're paying a lot of extra money. But I mean, for some people, if that's your only route in and it brings the payment down, then, I guess you can't pass that up. Buying property while in a pandemic, I'm hearing that at least the housing market in Sacramento, that people are buying right now. A house just next door to us just sold. They're closing next Friday. So
because the rates are so low.
Yeah, that could be it.
That is it. I've talked to people who said that their friends are buying up houses. If you can afford it, and if you can meet the criteria of the banks, which you said have been toughened up a bit, but if you can, the rates are really low right now. All right, so it looks like we've got about 3 minutes here left. If either of you have any closing remarks for our audience.
Please contact me or go to our website, the200.org, or email me if you want to get on our email list, rchavez@ccbuilders.org.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone for spending some time and for watching this, and to please share it. And another big shout out to Ron and John Gamboa and the California Community Builders for putting this together.
Perfect, thank you. And Angel, I probably could use an MP4 file of this, get it on some different distribution method outlets like Access Sacramento. So I'll offline with you about that.
Okay, all right.
All right, sounds good. Well, thank you for joining us today, gentlemen, Ron and Angel. Very informative program.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
All right, you guys have a wonderful week and take care and be well.
Bye-bye.